Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Thornburg, and the conversation about teaching your baby to sleep starting at 2 months old, for those mothers who cannot give the gift of sleeplessness without it taking too much from them during the day, which is a big distinction than a mom who can, with ease and without too much discomfort, continue to nurse the baby through the night. So the distinction there is natural giving, and that's what I want to focus on, because as we go through parenthood, we change like our kids change. We're not the same parent when we have our first child compared to the second or third, or when we have our first child and how we behave when they're younger versus when they're older. We really have to understand and put ourselves in context that we're developing too. Pediatrics is a developmental specialty, and parenting, you can think, mirrors that because it is also a developmental process for us to become more understanding of who we are, because again, we're just creating generations after generations, and we're one link in a series of chain links. We want to make sure that we're passing along the best we can, because moms and dads give good and they give bad. So we want to make sure that we're doing the best and hopefully tilting the tables and the scales towards the good. I want to highlight the natural giving versus the power down, because I think that the point that I was making is getting missed. And I can see all the comments, and I'm going to make another video on the comments that I've received from lots of mothers, from lots of organizations that promote breastfeeding. And I've also received a lot of comments from the international community, specifically Europe. And I think one of the mothers over there actually went and made a podcast immediately following my video because she was so mad about what I was saying. So it is definitely stirring people very deeply. That obviously is not the intention, because I have been doing this for so long, and I do appreciate that a mother has intuition that a male cannot have. I also appreciate that men don't carry babies, and it's a very different experience on the mother side than it is from the dad side, initially at least. So I appreciate all that, but I don't want to discount the fact that I have been a pediatrician for 25 years. I have 8 children of my own. We home birthed 5 of them. We grew up when they were younger on an organic farm. I practice functionally, holistically, and I am also board certified pediatrician. So I have a lot of experience through many different stages of life. My first patients from 20 plus years ago are now coming into my practice and are having their own children. So I have seen the ages and stages and seasons of parenting, been through it myself, and I've also seen parents in my practice, and now I'm starting to see the children come through. Whatever that's worth, if however you want to tilt the scales that I have no valid information, you're welcome to do that, but this video I would suggest is specifically for you if that's what you believe. I had an experience last night in my own house, and I was going to use this because this is once removed from the nursing through the night conversation, so it's going to be a little bit easier to understand what my point was by having it once removed, so it's not such an emotionally charged situation, plus being a little bit vulnerable with sharing what was happening in my house, not so much for me, but for who I'm going to talk about. As you know, I have 8 children, and the older ones come through the house depending on what they're doing at the time. And one of my children is currently at home, and she's been at home for a few weeks before she moves on. She's been traveling the world for a while, and she, at the house, doesn't have a set room. So she's kind of nomadic throughout the house for sleeping. And one of the girls in my house, the oldest one that resides in the house currently, she has her own room, and everybody else has a bunked room. And she's a senior in high school, and she gets a little testy having somebody in a room because, if you have your own room, you really like to have your own room. And then here comes an older sister. So now you have to share your room. And not only that, you're with an older sister who, by birth order, has more authority over you and will tell you what's up in life, whether that's good or bad, but that's what's happening. The senior in high school obviously does not care for that because she's learning how to become independent and move on into adulthood. So you can see that there's a natural rub there. But that's where the natural giving has to come in, because now the older sister is saying that the younger sister is spoiled. She has her own room. Why can't she share with me? This is ridiculous. This is not right. She's acting very stubborn and not wanting to understand the balance of the house. And that was the hierarchical approach. That's the older sibling taking that my needs are more important, and I'm going to label you that you're being selfish, and there is a much better way for you to behave. And I know what that better way is in the balance of things. This is how it must be done in order to correct people's actions. And so that's domination hierarchy. To take that over to what the breastfeeding situation is these mothers are saying, no, you have to nurse through the night. If you're not doing that, you're not nurturing your baby correctly. And if you're not nurturing your baby correctly, then you're a bad mom. So that's kind of how I see the analogy there. Now let's move to the natural giving side. I said to my oldest daughter, I said, well, there are several rooms in the house. I understand that your younger sister's room is the room that you would prefer to be in because there's only one person in there, but there are other rooms in the house. We have my room. My room would be very, very quiet. Also, your younger brother has a huge room. There's plenty of open floor space, and you could sleep in there. What is actually happening is you are deciding what the outcome should be, so you're not considering what other very practical, viable options are. So when you go into natural giving, you would stop and say, oh, I see that I am limiting my decision making to what I want, and then I'm using language to correct somebody to get what I want, and at no point am I honoring that other person because I haven't really looked at what other options are available that may also serve me and be for the house's betterment and for peace and for me not getting upset because I have stepped into moralistic judgment. And so the natural giving, when I pointed that out, said, you have other options and they're just as fine. It may not be your first preference, but they're just as fine. And then she said, I know, but she's still selfish. So, we're wired hard, especially as first-time parents, especially as the oldest child, especially as the older set of children in a larger family. And again, going back to the analogy on the natural giving to the nursing, when I say that if a mother is really struggling with sleeplessness and we're having negative effects on the family, either with her own personal health, her own mental health, her physical health, how she's relating to her husband, how she's relating to the child or the children, how she's relating to her job, to her larger community. If anything is that sleeplessness is taking too much, that she feels that life is too stressful. And remember, we could also have postpartum at the same time. And this is very real. I was 12 years as a child abuse doctor, so I've seen the ugly seam, dark seam edges of society. Mental health is a very serious issue. We don't want to have the most vulnerable of us victimized because the larger community didn't understand. So when we step into natural giving, there are different ways to nurse your child, and there is an absolute physiological, biological ability for a child to sleep through the night. And if you're a mom that can nurse through the night and it doesn't take from you, and I have plenty of those moms in my practice, and they're happy and you can see it, then great. God bless you guys, but I also want to bless all of those moms who have a difficult time nursing. So hopefully you saw that by taking this step one removed, you can see how we are all biased. And even with our best efforts, our feelings get in the way of logic. And by acknowledging ourselves and our limitations. And remember, I've done the invisible gorilla experiment, if you want to scroll back and see one of those, about how we are absolutely not aware of 50% of what's happening around us. That's true for all of us. Once we start to look at natural giving and then we state what we need, hey, I really need some sleep, this is really tearing me up, then absolutely it's okay not to nurse your baby, and it's supported by physiology that it's okay to let your baby sleep the night, and it's okay if you continue to nurse your baby. And that was my point. But I hope that those moms that were so vehemently and vitriolic against me, using things like, oh, because you're a man or because you're an American, you can start to see how you are judging others, labeling because of your own fear. And I can almost 100% guarantee that once your child gets older and they start exerting their own influence and their needs don't match your needs, because it's very easy for a newborn or a baby infant into early toddlerhood to be totally agreeable with the parent. But once they hit that 15-month mark, they become a different creature developmentally. They want to exert mastery on the world. And I can guarantee for these moms that are coming at me so difficultly, they are going to challenge those children in the same way because it's primal. You haven't learned to control your bias and how the moralistic judgment that you're exerting out. This is all intended for educational. I'm not here to judge anybody. My life story, if anybody out there knows it, knows that I have had to go through a lot to get to this place. And I am grateful for all of that and for all of the difficult experiences I had in my own maturation of philosophy and understanding and compassion. And that's why I do these videos, because if you're having a visceral response to something and it's negative to what I'm saying, you got to pause there and get curious about that. Thanks a lot for watching, and welcome to my new podcast.